Thank you so much for attending the Workforce Business Development Committee meeting. My name is James Mitchell, the chair. It's been quite some time since we've been together, so I would like all members to introduce themselves. Vice Chair.
Hello, everyone. Vice Chair and City Council District 6, Tarek Bakari.
Okay. The colleague who's in the room with me, Mr. Graham.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Ms. Dimple Ashmere.
Hi, Dimple Ashmere at large and committee member.
Hey, Dimple. And the representative from District 4. Is Renee there?
I'm here, Renee Johnson, District 4 committee member.
And we have some more guests that are with us. Could you go ahead and introduce yourselves as well? I see Dana Fenton.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dana Fenton. I'm the Intergovernmental Relations Manager for the city, and I'm work out of the city manager's office.
Thank you, Dana. Ms. Caldwell?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Ralphine Caldwell, Executive Director for LISC.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We have 2 agenda items that I know we do have some time limitation. And so I want to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Tracy Dotson so she can introduce the first item on our agenda. Tracy?
Great. Thank you, Chairman. So everybody should have a copy of the presentation we just sent out, and I want to walk everyone through a couple of things first. The data that we have around small business, as well as a state update that Dana will give us, and then get into the feedback that we have gotten and some different recommendations for consideration. If you go to the third slide, the state of Charlotte's small business, and there's some things on here that I think are just important to highlight. 93% of the businesses in Charlotte are small businesses with employees less than 50. That's a little bit different. I think there was some information that was put out that said 93% of employees were in small business. That actually makes up, that 93% actually makes up 40% of the jobs, which is a little bit different than some information. At the bottom left of that slide, you will notice that the breakdown of small businesses in terms of employee size, 1 to 3 employees is actually the largest, and then it stair steps down to the 25 to 49 employees. Also important at the top right corner is in orange are the industries that we think are being hit the hardest by COVID-19 and the percentage of our workforce that makes up. So you can see in there kind of how that breaks down between restaurants, entertainment, real estate, and other services, manufacturing. And then at the bottom, we included the Charlotte CBI, percent of women, minority, and women minority-owned businesses. It's important to mention there that CBI isn't just 50-person or less. They could actually have vendors that are larger than the 50. So I know the question came up of what we were doing for them, for the MWSBEs. We're working with CBI, but they have a database that's larger. It doesn't just include ones that are 50 and less. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Dana. There was a group formed at the state level to prepare for upcoming legislative session in light of COVID-19, and I think he has some things to share with us.
Thank you, Tracy. Dana?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks for allowing me to be with you today. Tracy asked me to talk a little bit about what is the Economic Support Working Group that's been established. It's been established by the Speaker of the North Carolina House, and its purpose is to facilitate bipartisan and productive conversations between members to prepare for a potential legislative session to respond to the current crisis. This is a 25-member group appointed by the Speaker of the House, and it's chaired by Representative Jason Saint of Lincoln County, Julia Howard of Davie County, and Michael Ray of Northampton County. I would note for the record that Mr. Ray is a Democrat, so you have 2 Republicans and one Democrat serving as co-chairs. We have 4 of our representatives serving on the working group, those being Kelly Alexander, John Autry, Chaz Beasley, and Nassif Majid. In a broader context, this working group is part of the House Select Committee on COVID-19. This is a 76-member committee chaired by the Speaker of the House. He established 4 working groups, including the aforementioned economic support, along with continuity of state operations, education, and healthcare. And groups have a similar purpose, and that is to look at potential legislation for a legislative session. And my remarks today, of course, are limited to the economic support working group. This working group has met 3 times and received briefings and presentations from their own staff, federal and state officials, and industry groups to assess the impacts of COVID-19 to the state, the economic impacts, that is. And really the nut of the issue for them is that they need to distinguish between actions needed to respond to the crisis that can be accomplished administratively and those that need enabling legislation. As you're going to find out, the governor has already taken most of those, if not all of the administrative actions needed. And it's going to then be up to the General Assembly to pass any enabling legislation to make it complete. Just so you know that they did receive briefings from their own staff on the changes that the CARES Act made to unemployment benefits and small business issues. They've also heard from Thomas Stiff, the North Carolina District Director of the Small Business Administration. They've also heard from the Governor's Office, the Golden Leaf Foundation, and several industry groups. And after hearing from these stakeholders at the first couple of meetings, they have now narrowed their focus to legislation related to unemployment benefits and payment of taxes. And again, these complement the administrative actions already taken by the governor. And they're looking at 2 separate bills. One is for unemployment, and that's basically to conform the North Carolina unemployment system to the changes that were made by the CARES Act. And the second is on tax payments. The Department of Revenue has extended the deadlines to file taxes from April 15th until they've extended that to July 15th. They also have to take parallel action to ensure that people who pay their taxes after April 15th for underpayment of taxes do not accrue penalty, do not accrue interest for that time. And we expect them to come back next week, Mr. Chairman. They have their next meeting on Tuesday, the 14th, to formally consider that legislation. And as of now, these are the only pending actions that we see coming out of this committee. All of their attention has been paid to these 2 issues, and for nearly all their attention, or if there's any other issues that come up, we'd be glad to alert Ms. Dodson to that. And Mr. Chairman, that completes my remarks.
Thank you, Dana. Any questions for Dana? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Tracy?
So with that, we'll go to slide number 5. And I talked a little bit about this on Monday night, about all of the places over the past week or so that we have gathered information from. The city of Charlotte had last Friday a business forum. Councilmember Bakari was very helpful in lending us his Zoom platform to handle that. I think I said on Monday night we had over 466 people register for that. We only took about 20 speakers, but we got a lot of good comments and good feedback out of that. The Business Advisory Committee was very proactive in reaching out, using their members and reaching out into the community to get feedback from small businesses, and looked at 3 areas. I think they have some others that they're going to continue to look at as well, which is they looked at the food truck industry, they looked at aviation, and then they looked at all small business.
That's right.
So they have some others that they'll continue to do, but they came with a list of recommendations. And then also we received a list of recommendations from the minority chambers. LGBT chamber and Chad Turner had submitted a letter to us with a lot of recommendations. The mayor held a series of industry calls, and this was with financial institutions to understand their readiness, to kind of just gauge where their thinking and their thought process was. The hospitality industry as well as the retail industry. So we hit, I think through hospitality, for example, we hit food and the food service industry in there. And then on retail, we just tried to kind of spread out through the community. We also launched the Charlotte Support Small Business website, or email, excuse me, and we are continuing to push that out to take feedback and comments anytime that somebody has one. And I would encourage you, if you have somebody that you run into, the fastest way to get it to staff is to give them that email. They can send it back to us, and we can start to vet it. We also have done research on peer cities. And are continuing to do that. We looked at cities, Raleigh, Durham, Austin, Nashville, Denver, Seattle. So we're continuing to grow that research and outreach to landlords. So last week was April 1st. I had a lot of conversations with landlords before April 1st, and I think a lot of them were saying, well, we're just waiting to see. So we have followed back up, and even today, just to share with you all the stat that we got, so I talked to one landlord that has in several industry sectors, 100% of his retail tenants are talking to them about some kind of deferral or forgiveness, 20% of his office tenants and 10% of his industrial tenants. So just, I got that was just one company here in Charlotte is local landlords, but local landlords, but I just thought that was useful for you all to know, and we're continuing to do that outreach. If we can go to the next slide.
Well, if I may, Tracy.
Yeah.
Councilmember Johnson, did you have a question? Renee?
No, I was hoping to see the slides.
Okay.
Chatted with Wendy, so thank you.
All righty. I'm sorry. Go right ahead,
Everybody see
Tracy.
them? Can everybody see them?
Now they can.
Okay.
So then the next slide, slide 6, we took all of these recommendations, and I have in front of me 4 pages on 11 by 17 of the recommendations, and have started to build out staff response. What do we think can be done? What can't be done, and things like that. I will hope to get this out to everyone probably early next week. I have not vetted it, and it's a very fluid document. But I just want you all to know that we are doing that, so when somebody says, well, I made this recommendation, what happened with it, we're tracking all of it. We found that there was kind of 6 common themes within the recommendation, and that's what you see on the slide, was establish some type of stabilization fund, establish emergency response committee, launch an Open for Business campaign, and create a small business resource center, launch a PPE initiative, as well as assist at the airport with concessionaires. I'm going to go through each one of these. I want you to know that there was other recommendations in there that related to city business, like permitting and inspections and things like that. And there's a lot of great work that is going on out in the community. Councilmember Mitchell and I were talking about this yesterday. A lot of the general contractors throughout the city have formed together to create a coalition. And they are working with both the city and the county hand in hand to do best practices on construction sites, so that there's some uniform kind of practices as inspectors go around to sites. But then also talk about the need of inspections and permitting and all that kind of stuff to make sure that business in this industry sector does continue as normal. And what I got from the private sector side yesterday was that everybody was happy. Both the city and the county were working hard, and there was no complaints on that. So that's an example of one of the recommendations that came into us. You won't see it here, but it's one thing that I want you to know is working well. So if we go to the next page, this was a recommendation kind of bucket, if you will, number 1, which was a small business stabilization fund. And the ask was a fast action and accessible small business fund grant to support small businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our response to that is to create a micro business relief fund. We have $1 million of existing CDBG money. We would be looking at businesses with 5 employees or less. We feel like that's where there is a gap. And if you remember the data point that I showed you earlier on, the percentage of small businesses that have that 1 to 3, or even I think the next bar in that was 4 to 5, or it might have been 4 to 7.
49, yeah.
And so that's a big segment of our small businesses. The funds would be used for working capital, and they would target the corridor geography, which is the next slide we'll come to in a second, and it'd be up to $10,000 per business. And we intend to bring this to you all on Monday night. I had asked Ms. Caldwell from LIST, because they are a great partner of ours and offering to help us administer this. I had asked Ms. Caldwell to join us today to speak a little bit more detail about what we're trying to put together.
Rafin?
Yes.
Ms.
Well,
Caldwell?
first of all, thank you, Chairman Mitchell and council and staff. Thank you for allowing me to present to you today. We are, for starting off just with LIST and what we've been doing in regards to the small business community. We actually, just like the city staff, we've spoken with a lot of our small business owners in our target neighborhood, Historic West End. Probably about 20 or so businesses that we've spoken to. And one of the things, which is what you all, is not anything new to all of you in the room, that they've all said that they need monies for payroll and capital, but also it's making them rethink the way that they do business, as well as making sure that they look at being able to gather forms, things that they know that they need now, but also when it comes to digital and technology, making sure that they get a little bit more up on that. So this pandemic has really taught us a lot of things about some of the things that we are going to be doing here in the coming year in partnership, of course, with the City of Charlotte to be able to assist our small businesses. We're also working with the Small Business Administration, so we're going to be offering some webinars and things like that for small businesses so that they can kind of get information in one bucket rather than getting, several emails. And there's a lot of information that's out there, which can be quite overwhelming for a small business owner. Based on Monday, the council gave some direction in regards to the small business program. We at LIST have started moving forward with the recommendations of the council. And one of the things that we're doing in regards to this stabilization fund is we've started working on, and already have it semi-completed, the actual application process. The application will be online. We do need to add some verbiage. I do want to make sure that the council is aware with CDBG funds that you are using for this particular project. There is certain terminology and certain documents that's required. So we do need to make sure that in the application, absolutely reflects that. Some of the other things we're working on, obviously, we're working on our contract and we're working on loan documents. We do have to have a certain amount of documents that the small business owner will need to sign. And again, this is because of the fact that we have of the type of funds that we're using. So we've got to make sure the documents are in order, but also that they're very much where the small business owner can understand them. So we're working on that right now. We're also working with, I've had a conversation, we're going to reach out to, we want to make sure that this process is very inclusive. So we want to make sure that we know that it's in businesses with 5 employees or less. We know that the businesses must be located in the targeted corridor, but also we want to make sure that there's an equity lens, so to speak, on the small businesses that receive relief. So we are looking at that now, and I'm reaching out to, I've reached out already to the Latin Chamber and some others to make sure that we can get this word out to a broader, more diverse audience. And we're also checking, the city staff is currently checking with HUD on a few things in regards to the requirements for CDBG funds. We know that when we deploy these funds, there's certain requirements that HUD requires for the small business owner to do. Even after they receive the funds, we have to follow up with them 3 to 4 months down the road. So we're trying to see and make sure that we have a really good grasp on that, and the city staff is handling that now as well. So we are definitely moving forward. I would say that when we open up the application, our focus is we know that 1 million will do we'll do 100 small businesses. When we open up the actual site, We will open it up for a certain period of time, but we do have to make sure that people have a opportunity to apply, so we'll have to keep it open for a couple of days. But we will make sure that, we're monitoring all of that. When we go to review the actual applications, we will actually have, it will not just be LISC, it will actually be LISC along with someone from Ms. Rodman's office as well, one or two of her staff. We'll be reviewing the applications with LISC so that we can ensure that we all are in agreement with the funds that are going out the door.
So, Ms. Caldwell, I'm going to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining and partnering with us. And then I'm going to turn it over to my committee members to get their input as well.
Sure.
Vice Chair, any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
No, I think that's a great update. I think just in general, on the whole update and why we're here and what we're doing, I think that this is a very important step, and I'm glad that we all came together very quickly to be able to meet and discuss as a leadership group as we figure out. I think the most important thing, again, just reemphasizing what others have already said, that we can do as a group of staff, of private sector partners, and of city leaders here, is to craft what is our plan going to be. That will be kind of, we understand it, we're in agreement, and we're executing, and all the subparts of that. I would just highlight that, personally, I think we've been operating so far on an approach where we've been at step one, which is determine the specific pain points that small businesses and everyone has and the needs that are across all the industries. I think we've gathered a bunch. I loved the way you guys summarized that, Tracy. I think the team did a really good job putting that together since we gathered it. I think now comes the point where we move on to the next steps that enable us to craft and execute that plan. The next step is what solutions can be delivered, and is the impact of doing that worth the effort for us? And I think we're going to be presented with a variety of things we could do. And the question is, given the bandwidth we have, given the impact it's going to make, should we end up doing that? And then I think that's where Dana and others in our other committee of intergovernmental relations, where co-chair Councilman Winston and I co-chair, comes into play. We need to determine what the optimal response role is going to be. Can we as a city deliver that solution, or do we need to partner with some kind of private sector entity of some kind, or do we just need to add it to that legislative agenda that goes to our partners in the county and the schools or the states or the feds? And I think we're going to have to re-envision how we do the legislative agenda. But I think once that's done, we prioritize based on our overall bandwidth. And then that's where I think we'll finally be hitting on all cylinders, which is we have a plan, we've agreed to it. Staff can then go and execute without wondering, is this the thing we should be doing or this? And we as a council feel comfortable and a committee feel comfortable that we're doing the things that we should be, and we're constantly refreshing our view of that. So I'm in support. I'm very anxious to get to these next steps, as I know our small businesses in town are as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councilman Graham.
I am too. I think my colleague just echoed my sentiments as well. I think we're on the right track. I know that we all want to move quickly, but I want to make sure that we also dot I's and cross T's and make sure that we're delivering exactly what the small business community wants. So I think, we're just one of the spokes in the wheel. The county introduced a program on Tuesday. We will introduce something hopefully next Monday. Right. The state's doing their deal, so there's a lot of help out there. So I don't think we're losing ground, but I do understand the urgency of now. And so I just want to make sure that that we dot I's, cross T's, and make sure that when we get the information out there, when we get the resources out there, that we do so in an effective and efficient manner that makes sense for everyone. So just charge right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. I just want to ensure my understanding that, is this a grant or a loan?
A grant.
Okay. And this is just for the businesses in the opportunity zone that we were discussing on Monday, right? Right?
We're using the word corridor geography.
So if you,
Corridor geography. Okay, I'll write
if
that
you
down.
go to the next
And
slide.
then there's enough for 100 businesses. How will those 100 businesses be selected? Is that first come, first serve, or is it an application process, or what's the approval process?
Ms.
It is
Caldwell, Ms. Caldwell, you want to address that, please?
Yes, absolutely. It is an application process. However, we will look at the businesses according to, first, they have to be in the targeted corridor geography that you all have already chosen. So that was chosen by the city. And then secondly, we will look at the business from a minority, women-owned businesses. We'll look at that. We're going to do a scoring model with the businesses. And hopefully on Monday, when we come back to you, I'll have a better grasp of all of that. We're looking through all of that now to ensure that we can be able to have a very fair system for choosing the businesses that receive the monies. And I do want to go back to, there was a question about whether or not it was a grant or a loan. We are working with HUD. We have some questions to HUD in regards to that. So I want to make sure, Chairman Mitchell, that we say either grant, or if it is a loan, it will be a forgivable loan where there will not be a payment.
Okay.
So I do want to make sure, I want to specify the two, please, if you don't mind.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Ashmere. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Johnson, will you finish?
I am, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Ashmere?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Graham, urgency. Really, time is of the essence here, especially with businesses trying to get capital. It's certainly a challenge in this climate. So the faster we implement this program, we'll be able to save as many small businesses as possible. Though I'd like to understand the corridor geography. I know this was approved by council, but is there any way we can go over those, or you can send it to us via email, so that we are reaching out to even businesses that we know that could potentially qualify for this grant?
Yes, excellent point, Dimple. I will make sure that we get this out in our package for the entire council, just to kind of educate everybody on the corridor geography, which is, do you see it on your slide now?
I see the Micro Business Relief Fund. Could you go back one slide? Okay, there we go. Yeah, I just see that it just says targeted in the corridor geography. And then I guess in the next slide you had a map.
Yes.
But having some sort of just a location, so that way we are targeting this to businesses that are located, because there are a lot of other businesses that would want to apply for resources. I guess, are we providing alternative relief fund for those businesses that may not be in the corridor geography?
I have two hands up. Vice Chair, you want to address that? And then I have Councilman Graham.
I had another comment and question, but I don't know if I can address that. So
Okay, let me let Councilman Graham address that, and I'll come back to you, Vice Chair. Councilman Graham.
Again, we're intentionally trying to be narrowly tailored and focused to providing resources for those on the corridor from this grant. And again, there are a number of other programs out there in the community via the county, via the SBA loans, via the state. So there'll be a number of opportunities for small business owners to kind of identify the lane that they want to drive in terms of where they can get resources fund. And a part of what I think we ought to do, Tracy, is to, again, communicate to them other avenues where they can go for funding as well.
And we'll talk about that in just a second
Gotcha.
as well.
Councilmember Ashmere, you okay?
Yes, so I think to Mr. Graham's point, there are a number of other resources. So SBA has those PPP and the EIDL loans. Again, I think it goes back to the point that Mayor Potemp and I had mentioned on Monday, where a lot of small businesses are not going to be able to get those loans because of not having existing lending and business relationship with one bank. And right there, I think that's where the gap is that we're trying to fill, and I know the county has something, but that's a loan. So I know that we have to, I mean, we don't have unlimited resources either, but I hope that we can find an alternative such as this, a grant for those businesses that may not be able to qualify for those SBA loans.
Thank you, Ms. Asmir. Excellent point. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tracy, let me ask you a couple questions now, a little more specifically on this program as we're contemplating it. And if you already said it or you don't know the answer, not a problem. But I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier about really understanding the impact and if it's worth our efforts or not. Clearly, there are a lot of companies struggling out there. So, like, in those corridors, do you have a rough count of how many businesses there are that have 5 employees or less?
I have the number. I don't remember right off the top of my head. I want to say, and Ralphine may know right off, that when we had pulled that geography, it was 4,000, maybe somewhere, 4,000 small businesses. I'm not sure how many of them were in, but I will get you that accurate number.
Okay, so 4,000 businesses. So, I mean, I guess like if you split, let's just because we have to do some rough math to see if this is worth the best use of $1 million, if it's really going to help, right? So like if $1 million, $1 million is split between 4,000 businesses, if everyone applied, that's $250 each, right? I'm just concerned, and if it's 5 employees or less, and it's for the same kind of PPP stuff that's in relation to kind of helping them continue their payroll, even up to $10,000 per business, that's probably barely 2 to 3 weeks of covering salary for places like that. So it's not going to be an ultimate solution. It's just going to be a life raft until
Exactly.
PPP stuff starts flowing. So I think there's some questions before we ultimately make a decision on this that have to be answered with a little bit of math, which is, are we making a dent in the problem, or are we throwing a couple pebbles where either too many people are going to feel like they're getting too less and it was irrelevant, or we're barely able to help those that actually apply because the dollar amount isn't high enough. So I'm in a place right now where I'm not coming to the table opposed to anything under normal circumstances that I might have in theory. I'm giving it a good, fair shake. I just want to make sure if we spend $1 million here versus deploy that $1 million in another way in those same corridors, would it have more impact? So I don't expect you to have an answer on that right now, but I think that's probably the follow-on that we need before we would make a decision on something like this.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Tracy, you want to follow
I
up?
was just saying, Councilmember Picard, we'll get that data for you by the end of the day. I think we can pull it quickly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for working so fast on that.
Ms. Ralphine, Ms. Caldwell?
Yes, I will say that I wanted to add that in regards to the 100 businesses that we'll be assisting, we will work with them. All of them will get information about all the different, everyone who applies from LIST will receive information about all the different levels of assistance that's out there. So we're going to touch them in that way. And then the 100 that we are going to be working with will also get the follow-up, the technical assistance and all of that. So we're in essence creating like a pipeline of small businesses that we will continuously work with the city so that we can be able to make sure that, those businesses continue to thrive as well. And to go back to Councilman Bakari's thought as far as a life raft, yes, because some of the businesses we've talked to, their monthly operating is more than that. But what we're doing now is we're offering this to them now, helping them to at least try to stay on their feet. And this is where we have to have a more long-term plan in the next, 2 months, 3 months, however, to be able to still assist these businesses in Charlotte. And the last thing that I do want to say is the way that the council can help and assist in this is that I did talk to your communications folks this morning. And one of the things that I would like to do is, and my team and I thought this through, is do like somewhat of a, and I don't know if we can yet, and I haven't talked to legal about this, but could we do like a soft launch such that we could put something on the city's website, on Liz Charlotte's website, and say that this program is coming. Tell the businesses the documents that they need to go ahead and start gathering now.
like that.
The situation with these type funds, and again, CDBG funds require certain documentation that we as LIST, when we approve them, must have in the file, and there's not a variation to that, right? So we wouldn't be able to approve it because they didn't provide something. What I'm finding is we're talking to businesses now is that there are some things that they don't have readily available. So it might be nice, and I'm trying to see if we can roll this out after council vote Monday night, Tuesday morning, and we can put this on the website where we can go ahead and start getting ahead and then be able to release the actual application in the next couple of days thereafter. So, and I haven't talked with anyone about that. That was just an idea that came to me this morning, and I talked to your communications people, Ms. Dotson, and I would need to talk through that as well. But I think it would help if we can start telling businesses the things they can gather to be able to get funds to. And that's not just these funds, that's funds for any of the programs that are out there. There's a significant amount of information that they have to provide to be able to get some of those different pots of money that's out there for them. And we need to start making sure that those businesses start gathering that information.
So can I say one thing just to the partnership? And Ralphine did a great job. And to Councilmember Graham's comment about dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, we recognize the urgency in this. And so we're talking on a regular basis between the two organizations, what needs to be done, how is this going to work, so that the last thing we want is to launch something that is bumpy for anybody. There's enough frustration out in the community if you're a small business owner already. And it's the creative thinking, like Ralphine just put out, that I think we're trying to work through as fast as we can to get something out there so that we can identify the companies and work through this as quickly as possible. And so, Ralphine, I appreciate the partnership and the creative thinking that you guys are bringing to the table. And, we're working hard to how can we get information out and start the process, but then also be as thorough and dot those I's and cross the T's. So,
I think that's important.
Councilmember Johnson. Renee?
I'm sorry, I was waiting on the host. So we were in our meeting Monday. I left with the understanding that there were going to be corridors, plural, with that we were considering. But it seems as though today that we're talking about one targeted geography area. And also, in looking at the map, I can't see it that well. But can you explain, can you tell me what area this is? Are we looking at more than one corridor, or is this exclusive for a specific corridor?
So Renee, I'm going to take a stab, and staff, you correct me, but I think the map is the map we have had probably the last 2 years, and it's about 6 corridors that this map represents. West Boulevard, Batesville Road, and West Trade Street, Graham Street, Central Avenue, Statesville Avenue, and then Batesville Road and Sunset. So it is a pretty big geography. So it's about 6 corridors that we have always kind of gave a priority to. Tracy, if I missed
yeah,
it.
you got it spot on.
Thank you. I can't really, the map is kind of small on this end. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilmember Johnson, I will send the map out to everybody as well.
So committee, if I may, because I know we're going to lose Ms. Carter and Councilman Johnson, but I had conversation with Councilman Graham coming in on the second bullet point, and that is businesses with 5 employees or less. One end, I agree with Tracy. When you look at the state of Charlotte City business, 1 to 3, there are over 5,700 of those businesses in that category. But I think about those businesses too, like our restaurants and other retail, particular restaurants, who is deemed as an essential business, who might have more than 5 employees, who are providing jobs out there in the community who are struggling. And so I just wanted to see if there any desire to raise that higher than 5 employees or less. Can I get you all thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things I talked to the chairman about was the number, and I know that we're trying to help micro business, and that's generally, I mean, those who are 1099s, employees or less. But there may be, again, some folks in the quarter that has, like Chicken and Rib, right? They might have 5, 6 employees that go beyond the 3. So if we can raise it to, I would think 15 and below, I think that may capture a lot more folks. Obviously, it's going to have an impact on the numbers, dollars, but I think it may capture more folks in the equation.
Okay. So why don't we do that? We'll take that and look at the data on it, like number of businesses and things like that, and organize it so that you can have some real number comparisons.
That makes sense.
Okay. All right. So I want to do, did anybody have a question? No.
I do, yes.
Ms. Johnson, Councilmember Johnson?
Yes. Speaking of comparison, it would be so helpful for me if there was a grid of what these of the resources available for businesses. And I think that would help us identify gaps. Like, we know that the SBA has the loan, and we know that there's this loan for corridors, and we know there's the county has money, and there's the paycheck, and there's a lot of resources. Is there any way to get a comprehensive document so that we're able to compare and are identifying gaps for populations that are needed? So
Councilmember Johnson, I'm going to say yes, but then I'm going to look at Tracy and ask her, can her staff create it?
Well, and I think we have two things. I'll get to
Let me finish that point. So if we raise it to 15, I just want to make sure that there are, like, if we raise it to 15 employers, that might be duplicating resources, whereas there might be just limited resources for the sole proprietor or for the micro businesses. So I would just, if there's a way, and I know it's not just city, but if we're starting to, especially if we're going to have a resource guide for small businesses, there needs to be a grid so that we can truly consider and have the big picture. Thank you.
That's fine. We'll pull something together.
We'll do it, Councilmember Johnson. Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Here's what I'd say, because part of this is like, we know they're struggling, and particularly we know these areas in this corridor are struggling. But on the other side, we have to make sure we understand what are the impacts of what we're going to do, positive and negative. So Tracy, I'll just toss this one at you as well to think about, like, if we approved this, or if we went from 5 to 15 employees, or if we went from 1 million to 10 million, or if we went from these corridors to anywhere in town, right? Any of those factors, the basic question we have to answer is, what outcome will we affect? Wouldn't have happened if we hadn't done this. And I think, given the severity of what we're doing and the limitation of resources we have, we absolutely, at some level, have to be able to answer that. And if it is that, 50 companies of under 5 employees are going to get it, and we know for certain these 50 are on track and they just need a gap to be filled until PPP deploys through the FDIC insured banks, and that's what's going to get them there, and this is the difference between them making it to that or shutting up shop before then, that's exactly what we're looking for. But if we're unable with some level of confidence to say that, or even differentiate between 5 or 15 or the number of people, I don't think we're in a position where we can go forward with confidence, just saying, we know there's need there and this is money. Like, we have to do one step more of analysis there. So that would be my one point of emphasis for kind of teeing up, answering the question. If we don't do this, this is what we believe will happen specifically.
Got it.
Okay. So can we make a motion to move forward for Monday, April 13th, while I have Ms. Caldwell and Councilman Graham still in attendance? Is there a motion that could be made and put on the table?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Graham to move forward on the Micro Business Relief Fund. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, was that Ms. Ashmere?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of conversation, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Is this vote contingent upon us getting the questions answered?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, yes. Yes, Vice Chair. Okay. Question, Ms. Johnson?
Yeah. No, I don't have a question. I'm sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, committee. The ayes have it. Ms. Caldwell, thank you so much for your talent and time, and look forward to talking to you over this weekend. Councilman Graham, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. And Trace, let me just as a follow-up, we had questions from Ms. Johnson about the map to all of us, and then there was an outstanding question about how many businesses are in the corridors, and then to the Vice Chair comment about outcomes. All right.
Got it all.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing. I appreciate the urgency with everybody, but we're building a plane
That's right.
and flying it at the same time.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
Right.
just want to put that out there.
Thank you,
There's
Councilman.
going to be some turbulence.
That's right. Especially Monday. All right, Tracy, now we want to go to,
To the next slide, and we'll talk about the second area we heard in recommendations. So basically, we heard a lot about establishing a small business emergency response committee. And actually, yesterday, the mayor announced that the council was going to create 3 different task force in order to assist businesses, and they were going to be around 3 primary areas, and that was small business, housing, and the airport. And then the objectives of those task force, I think it's also important to mention, will have community participants on it as well. I know that the Small Business Task Force has 3 of our committee members on it. In addition to that, it has Mayor Pro Tem. And really, the purpose of the task force is to look at post-recovery challenges, to gather that community input, look at recommendations on how the city needs to pivot, and then also provide a long-term vision. And one thing that our staff has done to help this task force, even though you haven't gotten started yet, is to partner with the local company Stratified, who can do weekly digital surveys with businesses throughout the community to get more real-time data, if you will, or current data. And so as you all push questions to us, we can get them to do that. But they're also, I think, doing weekly kind of data check-ins and surveys. Any discussion around this one before we move on to the next recommendation?
let me just reiterate, that committee is Councilmember Bakari, Councilmember Ashmere, myself, and the Mayor Pro Tem. We are the 4.
Great.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ashmere?
yes, so are we looking to recruit small businesses to participate and provide recommendations to this committee?
So the task that the mayor laid out to us, that we can have up to 5 other expertise in the community to join us. The mayor was kind of direct in the sense we need an economist on the team, but I think then the 4 of us can kind of talk through what other expertise do we need to make sure we have a candid discussion, but more importantly, have those experts that really can help us provide what our small businesses need to move forward.
So will this be part of our first discussion as committee meets?
Yes, April 21st is our first virtual meeting, and I think the Mayor Pro Tem is working on a time that she'll be sending out to all of us by Friday.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So the third area of recommendations, and we heard this through a lot of different areas was this open for business. It's really proud moments last week as we talked to business owners, and they were trying to pivot. And it was great for them to say, yes, this is a hard time, but we're trying to make the best out of a hard time. And we want to be able to tell people we're open for business. And that was across the board. Obviously, food service industry we've heard a lot about. But then the retail industry, a lot of people are saying, well, people can't come into my stores, but I can still either do deliveries or I can leave on what they called porch pickup. We also heard people in the service industry that said, I do web design and I can still do that, but how do I let people know that I'm here? And so what we wanted to throw out there for everybody is a open for business campaign, and it can be in the bricks and mortar, but also through social media. Yes, the bricks and mortar people are supposed to be staying at home and going out, but even just driving to and from the grocery store, you pass storefronts, and something that is a common logo that brings our community together to lean in together could be something exciting. Also, as we come out of this situation in the pandemic, to unite a lot of our businesses. And I'm sorry, Wendy, will you go to the next slide? Yep, there we go. This is the one I'm speaking from. I apologize. So the idea behind it is the bricks and mortar campaign as well as the social campaign, but it's to really build out a database. And we're looking at 3 different areas, as I mentioned: food, retail, and services, other services. And we know that there's a lot of other partners that are out there that are already starting to, especially around food, collect and say, here are lists of who's open for business. But the goal would also be for business to business to collaborate. So I'm a retailer, but I don't have a strong online presence. I need somebody to help me build that out. I have a database in here that I can go look for a web designer, things like that help people connect to figure out how to stay in business or how to pivot their business through this time. This is evolving as we speak. From the technology standpoint, we're having daily conversations. Councilmember Bakari, we may need your help and some of your expertise in some of this along the way. But then we also feel like we can boost the marketing efforts in the social media campaign through Charlotte Open for Business. So again, exciting way to bring the community together, but something that we heard very loud and clear last week is people want to work, and they're trying to pivot. How can we offer resources to connect and collaborate businesses?
Any questions, committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair?
I just want to say, we heard this resounding theme from those businesses, like Tracy said, and it was very much, everyone's like, yes, they need capital right now. They need payroll. We hear that over and over again. We understand that's a huge issue. The other one that doesn't get as much airtime is this. They are innovating on a day-to-day basis. They're changing, pivoting models. They're doing things to stay alive, to be able to keep employing their resources to make it through. And one of their frustrations is, I'm a local small business. Everyone says in this town they want to support the small businesses. They don't know what I'm doing. They can't hear it. And this is that. This is exactly that. So I will just say, Tracy, you and the entire ED team who have taken this approach from what we heard last week, this is the kind of innovation that we need to be doing. And I applaud you. This is exactly what I'm hoping to see. Out-of-the-box thoughts that solve problems that are different, that people didn't necessarily know was a main top 3 problem. So good job to everybody on that. This is what we need to be doing more of.
Thank you. I will highlight, just to add to Councilmember Bakari's comment, one of the people in the forum last week was a florist, and they said, a majority of their business that gets them through the summer is from Easter, administrative day, and then Mother's Day. And there was also confusion around, well, am I essential business? Can I be open? And things like that. And so I think this too can help clarify some of that. We have to answer a lot of questions, but I think that this is a way to help encourage people to find a way to get back to business. So it's a very exciting one, and like I said, when I started this, it's a really proud moment to, a lot of moments last week to hear people say that they wanted to be innovative, they want to pivot, and the energy that they're putting behind that. If we can go to the next slide. So the fourth recommendation area that we have is a COVID-19 Small Business Resource Center. And what we heard is they need a place that small businesses can go to get easily digestible information that provides education about the availability, accessibility of programs, capacity building, and technical assistance. All of you should have gotten a list sent to you. It's 4 pages. It starts to outline all of the financial assistance that's out there and support that's out there, from the federal to the state to the local. So Councilmember Johnson, this is a start of what I think you were just asking for. But we want to encourage you that as you talk to your constituents and everybody out in the community, that you push this out. And we're trying to create a one source that has links, live links in it. People can go and find information, and we will continuously update it as we find other resources, as other resources are created. We have some really great partners in the community that are doing good work. The other piece that I will add that I think is really important and we have not talked a lot about is, of these resources and of these various entities in the community that are offering counseling, that are that information source, how can we support them? They're going to hit capacity. They're going to get worn down. But what is it that we need to do? So we are checking in with all of these to say, what are the resources that you need? Some talk about funding. One, I saw one yesterday that said, I just need more resources around the digital meeting services, and if we have more, we can provide more. Things like that. So we're doing that check-in, but that's an area where I might encourage you all to talk about how do we best support that, because that's what people need, is who has that knowledge of where the funds are, how it works, how do I apply? I will stop there for any discussion.
So let me go to Councilmember Ashmere, then to the Vice Chair, then I'll make one comment. Ms. Ashmere?
Yeah, so Tracy, I reviewed the document that you all had sent. I think it's very comprehensive. It also includes private resources such as Verizon grant with list. I think it's a great document. I just forwarded that to a couple of businesses that had reached out to us who couldn't apply for PPP and EIDL loans. So a great job.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ashmere. Vice Chair?
I didn't realize my hand was still up, but I would just mention on this one that this is another, Tracy said it well, I'll say it a more simple way. We just kept hearing, particularly from those micro businesses that we've been talking a lot about, under 5 or 10 or even 15 employees. They're like, I hear about this CARES Act stuff and PPP and all these billions of dollars and trillions of dollars coming out of the government. Like, I don't have a legal department and a compliance department. Like, can somebody just explain to me in basic terms, like, the key things I as a small business need to know? So I think this is us jumping into a space to bridge a gap
Right.
that we know exists just in the, parsing out these pages and pages of technical documentation and requirements.
So, Vice Chair, let me follow up on your comment. And Tracy and I had this conversation yesterday. She know I've been pretty passionate about having a hotline for small businesses. Now is the time to have our business owners be able to call in to one number, and someone can address them in their terms. I spoke to the Women Business Center yesterday, and it's the same frustration you just mentioned, Vice Chair. Great programs out there. They said, we tired of calling 7 different places. Can we call one shop and someone can step us through it? So, Tracy, is this an opportunity we can talk about a small business hotline to be implemented with the Resource Center?
Well, I think what we could talk about is there an entity that's out there in the list of resources that is a potential partner for a hotline. That's number one. Starting something from the ground up potentially takes longer. If there's a mechanism that we have to not recreate the wheel, if some of these different resources are offering online assistance, virtual meetings, things like that, can we help provide more staffing? I don't know. I mean, but I think we should look at it two ways. If we did it, but then also if we support one of our partners in a different way to help them grow their capacity.
Okay. All right.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, so if we go to the next page, this is still keeping with the resource center and the resource guide. This goes back to the Friday forum that Councilmember Bakari helped us with. There's a lot, a lot of information that's being created out there about trying to push out about how do you apply for these, where's assistance, what are other people doing. As I mentioned, we've been looking at other cities. Should we create or continue what I'm now calling the Friday Forum, which was, just having businesses the opportunity to voice where they are. I think this is going to evolve for everybody as we go through this. So do we need to create regular forums? Should we be doing live stream Q&A with experts? I talked to a city yesterday who they are taping experts explaining things that are relevant to what we're going through right now. They're pushing it out on social media, allowing people to send questions in, and then later in the week, they're having that expert do a live Q&A. So there's just a lot of different ideas around that we could shape out and continue with relatively easily, I think. It'll take resources, but I think it's something that's relatively easy to do. We also have the Charlotte Business Resource website. It's ongoing, but push out resources from there through the videos of partners and things like that. And then I mentioned earlier, supporting those partnerships that small business counseling and consultations are already doing.
So Vice Chair, I think what you started was great. Only comment I had to Tracy is Friday a good day, or gaining that type of knowledge and information. Most of us, is it better on Tuesday or Wednesday? Because Friday, to me, in my mind, is kind of that catch-all day, relaxing day, as opposed to Tuesday, be able to gain that knowledge and have a productive week. But what is your thoughts from the first one we had? Is Friday appropriate?
Well, yeah, I think that, and you're probably right, the rethinking, I think the entire thing needs to kind of be rethought for where are we now in our process and what are we looking to gain from it? And I would agree, yeah, you would love to have the runway of the entire week as you gather that information. I think the difference is last week we were still at a point of gathering as much raw data as we could that told us what the problem statement was in small business and in the various industry verticals they're in, paired with what are their ideas for solutions. And that's what I think has informed a lot of the slides that we've seen on ideas and things like that. I think going forward, we probably want a more refined, specific view of we went a mile kind of wide and an inch deep in the first one. So maybe you go and say this week's is going to be on retail small business.
Right.
Next week is going to be on, and then you really start to refine, and then you see as things are evolving. It's not just in the beginning what are the problems and the ideas, but then it's now that time has moved on, what are the new problems? What has arose in the last week that wasn't a problem before? Because I think things are going to be moving at an incredible pace. So I think that, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, every second that we all spend on things is a second that has to be the best second we spent. So if this is indeed valuable to our ongoing data gathering efforts, and we believe that, let's absolutely do it. But if we think it's just a thing where people can see us talking in public and say, oh, they seem to be doing something, let's not do that.
No, well, I'm going to look at Trace because I thought the feedback I received, that it was very helpful, and it was something that some of the business owners felt like were ongoing. Yes?
Well, I think that Councilmember Carr is right. Last week was about hearing. So
Okay.
that as everybody's trying to figure out what to do, again, this is an evolving process. And
Okay.
so, now, like, and go back to the example, now that the SBA loans have launched, but people have questions about it, do you do 1 week with an expert?
Right.
We did a partners call yesterday with a lot of the partners that are in this small business list, and they brought in somebody from the SBA to kind of just talk through. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily helpful to a small business, but it's just an example of how everybody's trying to information share. But it may be next week, we need to do a check-in with
Right.
a small business sector. You might do one on launching of the We're Open for Business. This is why it's important. This is what it is. So there's a lot of different things that I think that we can do with this. It's just more of the question I think is out there. We've kind of heard it in some of the recommendations. The question is out there, is this a place that you all want us to put our resources? I think we can quickly put a plan together and come back to you on it.
Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Ajmer, your thoughts?
I think these are all great ideas. When you say small business resource center, it makes me think of the great resource centers that we have for the developed developers. And we know how centralized and innovative that is, and how helpful to have a one-stop shop. So even if this is a virtual one-stop shop or something like that, I'm just for information being available and comprehensive. So I love this idea. I also love the idea for the Open for Business. So great job, Tracy. So thank you.
Thanks.
Miss Adams, Dimple? I'm sorry.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I like the idea where we are thinking outside of the box, open for business kind of thing. And also the idea of having some sort of a resource line where businesses can call and try to get some sort of help. But we also have to be realistic. Even though they were to call that number, eventually, if they were to apply for all these resources, they're going to have to reach out to 10 different agencies or entities to get loans or working capital or grant. I guess the resource line will not eliminate any outreach that businesses will have to do. However, it provides resources and some sort of assistance in interpreting that here are the loans or grants that you could potentially qualify for, and here are the resources that you should apply for. So I think having that realistic expectation going in would be beneficial.
Okay, good point. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay. So let's move on to the fifth recommendation, which is the Personal Protective Equipment Initiative. Businesses need PPE for their employees who are working with public every day and serving the community. I think we all hear about businesses that are looking for this equipment. We talk about it here at the city for our first responders and others. You obviously are hearing it within healthcare. But there's a lot, as people are pivoting businesses locally that are doing things to try to create this PPE, whether it's hand sanitizer, we've heard about the breweries, and how do we connect this? I do know that we have partners that are doing this. We've been digging as of today to found out that some partners were launching a campaign around who's trying to do business and connecting business that might need PPE with businesses that have pivoted to create an aspect of PPE. And so this is one that I don't know that we have a recommendation for or have gotten into yet. It's interesting. It's one that others may be more ahead of us that we want to partner with. But it is one that I think is a creative, and go back to what Councilmember Bakari said, it's about innovation. One of my employees said earlier this week that their housekeeper had pivoted and could make 40 masks a day. Well, how do you get that word out? And so it's an interesting one where our community is getting very innovative. How do we help make those connections? Same thing with the Open for Business. But it is one that I think we need to figure out if we're overlapping and duplicating, or could we add this to the Open for Business campaign? You know, I don't have the answer for that just yet. This one is evolving as we go, but this is an area where we have seen a lot of thoughts around. So I will open it up to you all.
Committee, any feedback? Ms. Johnson? Councilmember Johnson?
I didn't have feedback on that. I kind of wanted to piggyback on what Councilmember Azmira said just a minute ago about helping the small business. And this might be something for the Small Business Task Force for the recovery, but would there be an opportunity to have a coach assigned to some of these small businesses with helping them with the application and helping them find the money, but actually helping them walk through the process? If you've been a small business owner and you're spending the majority of your day working, and you may not have that legal department or that HR department that can take care of you or really research these processes. So I don't know if this is something we're taking a look at or taking a look at working with a community partner, but our small businesses, they need practical resources, such as that hotline, such as someone to walk them through, maybe follow up in a few months and see if their needs are met, and make things a little more simpler. This is I keep saying extraordinary time, and I just think that they need help, even space. So if there was, I know when I first moved here, I heard that there was a nonprofit organization that used to rent space at a discount rate for small businesses, but then that wasn't available. Space is very expensive here. So if we look at a hub or a business incubator or something like that to truly help the small businesses, I think that it's a time to consider that. Especially if you say that 93% of the businesses here in Charlotte are small businesses, they're going to need they're going to need a boost for recovery. So I just think that if that's something that we can look at a partner or perhaps a city, and again, I keep envisioning that the developer centralized space. If we had something like that for small businesses, maybe off-site, and again, if this is outside of our scope, I apologize, but something practical, an incubator to give them what they need to get back on their feet.
So can I?
Tracy?
Yeah. So two things, Councilmember Johnson, I want to add to that. Having what we call I think it's the Charlotte Innovation Center is exactly what you're talking about. And that's always been in kind of our, what I'm going to call midterm plans. I'm still relatively new, just under 2 years back at the city. And we're organizing economic development, having a small business, or it's really entrepreneurial innovation center. We believe every small business starts with a great entrepreneur, and having building out this innovation center. We have talked about it being off-site and looked at different ways that we can do that and build in what is in it. So that is exactly in our midterm, I'll call it, vision plan. But then if you look at that list of resources, we have some partners that are out there, Central Piedmont, Prospera, SCORE, that are doing some of this one-on-one coaching. And they actually are working directly with companies one-on-one, not just I'm going to go here and I'm going to give you a list of resources and you have to figure it out yourself. We have been talking to some of these about how do we help them expand, or are they at capacity? Do they need more? What is that? So some of that's going on. I would assume, and this is just me venturing a guess, that if we went out to the community, we probably need more of these resources. But again, Councilmember Mitchell, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Do we need to create our own, or do we need to expand others, help others expand to do that one-on-one? But some of it is happening.
Yeah, so Councilmember Johnson, excellent idea. Just a 30-second quick personal testimony. 1995, when I was talking about opening up my own computer business, I went through a Charlotte Chamber had a young round table type program, and that's why I met Linda Lockman Brooke, and we were matched up with someone in our field. And I had a gentleman who had been in IT for about 20 years to really mentor me for about a year and a half. And so from 1995, then around 1997, I started my own computer consulting business. I think you're spot on. I was a one-man wrecking crew, trying to do everything, and then sitting down, having a mentor to talk about back-end support, how you're marketing. It just put me ahead of the competition, and I like your idea. As the Tracy point, how do we capture that? Do we have a partner out there that can provide that, or is that something we have to, get creative on? But I like it.
So to that point, can I just add, because I get really
Yes.
excited about our bigger vision on this. As we talked about it, we were looking at our innovation center being around 4 steps of a company. The ideate, which is I've got this idea, I don't know how to do with it. That's a different level of mentorship and partnership. To the startup, I have the viable idea, I have the business plan, and now I really need to get it going. To the accelerate, some people want to be one location, some people want to expand. To the scale, and the ones that are going to go really big. And so how do we establish something that helps companies at all 4 of those levels that can offer that kind of support? And it's coaching at different levels.
Right.
Councilmember Bakari and I were having conversations about things that were out there in the community for the accelerate and scale pieces of it. And there's ones that are in companies that might be a tech company. It might be, I would put some local breweries in that same category that have started up, have really been successful, and are growing at a rapid rate. So it's just one of those things that I want you all to know that we are thinking about those things as well.
Okay. Great discussion.
Next,
The PP? Yeah.
Yeah, he's on area number 6. We heard a lot of comments about the CLT
Yes.
concessionaires. And I wanted to invite our aviation director, Brent Cagle, in today. So he is on the phone, I know, to give us a little bit of feedback about what he's doing. He and I talk on a regular basis, and they're working hard out there to make sure that business can resume for a lot of the businesses that are out there as back to normal as quickly as possible. So Brent, if you are still on the phone, I will pass it over to you to talk about what you are doing.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, council members, for asking me to talk on kind of what we're doing. Clearly, this is unprecedented in our industry. We have seen traffic reductions of 90 to 95%. We know that all of the aviation department and all of our partners are feeling the impact. Related to the 2 specific requests here that Tracy sent over to me, one is the suspension of all capital improvement obligations for concessionaires at the airport for 12 months. What I will say is we are working with the concessionaires right now, literally, as I've been listening to this call. I've also been editing a letter to both Parodies and Hosts and their sub-concessionaire ACDBE partners related to the rent relief that they will be entitled to via the terms and conditions of their contract. So we are moving on that. The capital improvement, the obligations for capital improvements that the concessionaires have really come in 2 forms. The first form is for refreshing or rebranding concepts on a periodic basis. And so that may be renovating an older store, or it may be taking a particular concept that may be dated and rebranding it into a fresher concept. And the contract has provisions, certain points in time where either of those things can happen. The other area where there are capital requirements would be when we add space to the terminal. For example, the new food court area, the plaza, which we opened just before this crisis. those create new concession opportunities. And again, those new opportunities lead to capital investments on behalf of the concessionaires. We have always and will continue to work with the concessionaires to make decisions about capital that make sense for the business. We take an approach that their success leads to our success and vice versa. And so while I'm not sure about the 12 months on an absolute suspension, what I would say is we will continue working with the concessionaires throughout the duration of this crisis to understand what their position is and to understand when capital investments make sense. We would certainly not be looking to force them into capital investments that's going to be detrimental to their business and ultimately to the aviation department and our business on a whole. The 12 months on it, quite frankly, we're not sure. I don't think the world is sure the duration of this event and what it means for the travel industry in general. You know, optimistically, we might start to recover in 6 months. Pessimistically, it could be significantly longer than that. And so what I would say is we are always prepared to work with them and work with them to make investments that make sense for the business. The second ask that they had was a commitment to allow airport subtenant operators to maintain leasehold interest for 12 months without penalty late fees in order to return to operations. I think, so I'm reading a little bit into this, but my answer is based on what I think this question or this comment means. I think what this means is, will we agree not to evict or deem any concessionaire in breach of contract throughout this crisis? And I can tell you that is never our intention, and it's not our intention now. What our intention is to work with them to get through this crisis so that together we're all prepared to get back to normal operations and doing business as soon as this crisis starts to pass. So there is no intention at all on behalf of the aviation department to force the concessionaires into bad business decisions or then to deem them in breach of contract and try to evict them because of that breach of contract. That is absolutely not our intention. We want to partner with them so that we can all get through this and be ready to get back to business.
Brent, let me be the first one to tell you thank you so much. You were on the call with D'Alva and the rest of the business advisory going through the recommendations. I can't tell you enough, sir, of how your presence and willing to work with the small business out there was a huge relief for them. So thank you for being a good partner and working with them in Paradise and CMH Host. Committee members, any other comments, feedback for Mr. Cagle?
I got one thing to add to. Nope. Okay, Brent, can I put you on the spot just a little bit? You and I have talked about this, and you've explained it, and I think it's pretty clear. I had a question on Monday night about helping the concessionaires versus individual employees. Can you address that just briefly?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, so this question has come up often, and I wish I had a different or maybe even a better answer. I don't know if it's better, but different. All of the provisions, so the concessionaires are absolutely entitled to rent relief, and we will continue working with them to help them succeed. None of that rent relief, I have no requirement, and legally I have no ability to require that the rent relief that they receive, that they absolutely will receive, can be conveyed then into requirements for their employees. I think we all know, we've seen it on the news. Actually, Fox 46 had a story last night about airport concessionaire employees who have been laid off. That is unfortunately the truth. Those are business decisions that host their sub-concessionaires and Parodies and their sub-concessionaires are making. And we really don't have any contractual mechanism or any legal basis for requiring them to make decisions or requiring them to do things as it pertains to their employees. We can give them the rent relief that they're entitled to, and we can work with them, but we are legally prohibited from it requiring them then to do other things for their employees above and beyond what the law provides.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I do remember that question. Councilmember Ashmere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cagle, thank you for being proactive in addressing some of the requests that are coming in from tenants. There were a number of items that Dialga had for airport. So does your recommendation include all the things that her report lays out for the airport?
Yes. So the recommendations that came to me from Dialga, there were actually 4 of them. One of them you've already covered, and it's related to PPE for local businesses or contractors. The other 2 I just went through. The third was related to rent, and it was basically a request for rent relief, which they will receive under the terms of their contract.
Okay. Thank you so much. I know that there will be an aviation committee or airport committee, and they might have recommendations as they're working through. If we can just get a continuous update from that committee to the Workforce Development Committee so that we're all on the same page.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson.
Anything? I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. If there's nothing else, then we will go to the last slide. This was intentionally left somewhat blank. As Councilmember Mitchell and I spoke yesterday, when I called him after the mayor made the announcement about the task force, I think the question is, you know, as we move through the next 10 days, we want to make sure, and Councilmember Kari hit on it, we want to make sure that we are doing work that is making a difference.
Right.
And so stepping out of here today, I would love your feedback on what we can do to continue to research, pursue, or even implement versus what items should go to the task force for further discussion.
So committee, let me share with you what I shared with Tracy. This is just my initial thoughts, so we can open it up and have a discussion. I'm like the vice chair. I want to work on things in this committee that are urgent, that we can get done in a short time period. I think I shared with Tracy from 10 to 30 days. And those things that we think are farther, then we need to send those to the Small Business Task Force. I just think we are in a very crucial time with small business right now. We need to be focused on measurements and helping our small business community so it's more action oriented, and take a pause on the policy and allow the task force to spend time working on those big policies that can help our small businesses after the crisis. That was just my take with Tracy. I'm going to turn it over to my vice chair. Tarek, you want to give your thoughts?
No, listen, I agree. This is urgency at a level we've never seen it before necessary. So every minute we spend working on the wrong problem is another small business that dies and doesn't come back. Every minute that we prioritize the wrong thing over the right thing, small business dies. So I think that we have to think about it as desperate as that, and literally wake up on fire every day. And the difference between working hard and working smart, because I know everyone's working hard, is we come together with a plan that says and makes tough decisions on what we're going to do versus what we could do, but we've decided not to. And it's not going to be easy, but I know the team's up for it.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Johnson, your thoughts?
Thank you. So I was listening until the end of the meeting to try to hear what the resources are going to be for businesses that aren't in the airport or aren't in the corridors. Where is the assistance for the small business in the university district or for non-minority owned businesses? What are we doing for what is available for the small business owner?
Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I would say that, we've talked about the county fund, for example, and we've talked about others, some other potential opportunities, and then pushing out the resources. Yeah.
Right.
That's on the sheet that we sent out, which I think we updated this list to include the county. I'm looking at it. It might not, but if it's not, it will once it goes live. Oh yeah, it's on here. Creative Resiliency Fund.
And that's emergency funding or immediate funding?
Yes, they voted on that on Tuesday night. I need to look at the timing. I don't know, Councilmember Mitchell, if you know the timing of when it goes live.
They say they say midweek next week for the county.
And if someone wanted information about that, they will be able to contact our Small Business Resource Center for that type of guidance.
You
right?
you can give them the sheet that I gave you has a link, a live link to that resiliency fund. Or that's the Mecklenburg Creatives. I'm sorry, the Mecklenburg County. So it's the second one on the sheet under the Small Business Administration. Forgive me, I was looking at the wrong one.
But on our website, I know that slide was great. If that slide right there just had links to the different place, that's kind of, that would be one resource. But if, where can a person, like if they're not contacting me, where can they find a comprehensive list of resources?
I think a lot of the partners out there have it. I think our Charlotte Business Resource has it. I want to say the Alliance has it. The Charlotte Business Regional Alliance has resources as well. I'm pretty sure that our website, and I will check with CorpCom, list resources. If they don't, we will have them put this list on there as well. We'll try to post this list as many effective places as we can and make sure that we put it in places that we know that when we update it, it's quick to refresh it.
Okay, yeah. And then that grid will help as well, like the eligibility for each program.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Johnson, I hear you loud and clear. Your phone is probably like my phone. People just calling us for help and assistance, and I hear your frustration.
But I'm appreciative for all the work that you're doing. What Malcolm said, we're building a plane and we're flying it. We are,
yes,
and we're working, and we know the staff is working hard too. So thank you, Tracy. These are great recommendations. But I got an email after Monday night when they heard us talking about the corridors, and the gentleman, if I'm not in the corridor, I'm not a minority. What resources available for me? And like I said, we know they were not even eligible for unemployment up until the last stimulus bill. So we have to have a parachute or find a parachute for our residents.
yes.
Excellent point.
So I want to clarify, our website does have this list.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson, Tracy say our website does have this list.
Can you give the website, Tracy?
I think it's just charmac.org, .gov.
Oh,
Charlotte.gov.
it's not the one, Charlotte Cares for Small Businesses, not that one, just the.
It should be there. It should be there as well. It's our city website, which is
Okay.
charlotte.gov.
Councilmember Ashmere, thoughts, comments?
Yes, so a number of things, as I had alluded to this earlier, that businesses that are not part of the corridor. I think we have to look at what resources we might have in the second round for those businesses. To my colleague, Councilmember Johnson's point, what are we going to do for those businesses? So I'd like to see, I know that we are going to get grade later today, and then data that Councilmember Bokhari had requested. I think that will help drive some of these decisions moving forward. Though I understand the urgency that we have to support businesses that are already struggling that are in this corridor, but we have to take a step further to address the needs for other businesses that are not qualifying for other resources that are out there. And there are a lot of businesses that are not going to get PPP, not going to get EIDL, and not interested in the county loan or may not qualify. So we have to be more proactive in finding those big businesses and figuring out the solutions for those businesses.
Ms. Ashmere, you said it very well. I couldn't agree with you more. And Mayor Pro Tem just sent me a text echoing those same thoughts. We got to address those needs as well. So I say let's definitely don't run from it, but I like what you just mentioned. Maybe that's a round 2 for us and really put some time and energy. I do think, and Tracy is not going to let us off the hook, but one thing, the next step is this small business task force. And so let me try this, and Tracy, let me make sure we have a happy medium. Tracy is compiling that loan sheet she talked about earlier with just inputs from a lot of different sources, and staff is trying to go through them, answer some of them, but also kind of prioritize them, so to speak. And then if we can get that back, and then as a committee, we'll say, Small Business Task Force, you take this one. This one stays with the Business Workforce Business Committee, because I do not want to inundate our staff with everything, knowing our resources are limited, and I just wanted us to be so laser focused. So Tracy, would that be a good exercise? Let staff go through that list, and then let this committee look at it and give you directions, which ones are urgent and which one would like for the task force to take on.
Yeah, I think if, as we go through this, and I'm looking at the list, I think we need to filter down the ones that we want to push to you guys.
Okay.
I mean, some of these are quick, easy ones that we can do.
Okay.
Some of them, like I talked to you today about, like the permitting.
Yes, right.
You know, check. We just need to inform you all that there's the General Contractors
Gotcha.
Coalition, and they're working with the city and county. So some of these are easier. So I think there's probably just a handful that we would push directly to you all. The other thing that I would say is, as you talk to people, really push people to email us at that Charlotte Supports Small Business. Because if they say, well, and we saw this a little bit on the Friday forum, one person said, well, I don't qualify, and immediately there was a lot of chatter back and forth of like, oh no, yes you do. And so we're happy to continue to take remarks or questions and email back and say, here's the link of available resources, or no, what we know about SBA, yes you do. I mean, we're not experts like in the SBA loans, but we can at least start to filter some questions that we're seeing and see if we can identify anybody that is falling through the cracks.
Okay. Committee, are you okay with the process of letting staff to continue to filter this list and then send to us their recommendation, what should stay in the committee, and then other things should go to the business task force? Is everybody okay with that process?
Sounds good.
Okay.
It sounds good, and Tracy, if you can give the email address while we're in the meeting, so that individuals don't have to email us to get the email.
Yeah, if you look on which slide is that?
I think it's slide number 7. Charlotte Supports Small Businesses at charlottenc.gov. Charlotte supports small businesses at charlottenc.gov.
Okay.
This is slide right after the Dana.
Oh,
Wendy, can you?
Wendy, go back one, I think. One more. There you go.
There you go. Thank you, Wendy. Committee, you see it at the bottom right there?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're gonna have a contest. Who can drive the most traffic to that email address? I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
Okay.
So, Councilman Mitchell, I just want to be clear on something.
Uh-huh.
Out of this bucket of recommendations that we made, number one is what it is that will come to you on Monday night.
Yes.
Number two is clearly what it is. You all want us to proceed with item 3, continue to shape out item 4.
Right.
Item 5, I think we can come to you with ideas.
Right.
On that, but also understand what the partners are doing. And then item 6, I think we covered with Brent.
Yes.
Okay, got it?
Got it.
And then we'll continue to go through this list.
Okay. Committee, thank you all so much. I really missed you all for the last 3 months. I'm glad to be back, and thank you all for putting up with me. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.